My best friend Trevor found his wife in bed with his brother, so he started recording our game nights and studying our weaknesses until the night. He locked us in his apartment with a gun and shot me in both feet because I tried to let him win at board games, while his ex-wife and brother watched him force us to play through the blood until police finally stopped his championship trophy game. My best friend Trevor wanted to hit me at a board game so badly that he destroyed my entire life to do it. It all started when Trevor found his wife in bed with his brother. She literally told the divorce judge that she couldn't stay married to such a loser. His kids had just told him they wanted to live with their mom and Uncle Ryan because Uncle Ryan has a huge boat. When he started sobbing on my couch, I didn't know what to do. 20 years of friendship, and I'd never seen him this broken. It was the first time I'd ever seen Trevor cry. That's when I suggested we start a game night like the old days. Something in his eyes lit up that made me feel like I'd finally helped him. At first, Trevor's dedication made everyone happy. He showed up early every week with new games and snacks for everyone. He studied strategy videos and even bought a custom gaming table for his apartment. His confidence returned overnight. He started working out again and got a job at a board game cafe. His kids even asked to spend weekends with him after he taught them to play Catan. I was so relieved to have my best friend back that I ignored the first warning signs. It started small. Trevor created a spreadsheet tracking everyone's wins and losses across every game. He said it was just for fun, but he updated it obsessively. Then Jessica mentioned she'd seen Trevor at the library with books on body language and psychological manipulation. When she asked about it, he laughed and said he was just leveling up his game. The way he said it made my skin crawl, but everyone else laughed, so I did too. For a few weeks after that, I tried to convince myself everything was fine. Trevor was winning more, but wasn't that the whole point? He needed this. Then one night I forgot my wallet at his place and went back to get it. That's when everything changed, because right there on his laptop were dozens of video files, all labeled with our names and dates. The more I looked, the more sick I felt. He had been recording our game nights. Each one was accompanied by notes analyzing everyone's tells and their weaknesses. This wasn't normal. This wasn't okay. I figured if I confronted him, it would make him realize how dark things had become. But instead of giving an explanation, or even just awkward laughing, he snapped, "Don't you see? Game night is all I have left." He showed me screenshots of Ashley's Facebook where she'd shared an article about recognizing mediocrity in your partner and tagged her friends. Part of me understood his pain, but another part of me wanted to run. Instead, I just stood there and said nothing like a coward. Everything exploded the night we played for the championship trophy. Trevor had been awake for 3 days straight practicing. He'd invited his brother Ryan to watch him win. As we all sat around the table, he announced the new rule. All phones had to be put in a lockbox to increase focus. Seemed reasonable. Everything was smooth sailing until we heard a knock at the door. It was his ex-wife Ashley, standing there with 2 cops on either side. Turns out, Trevor had missed an emergency custody hearing. Ryan stood there smirking while Ashley told the officers that the kids were scared of their father. The second they left, Trevor locked the deadbolt and pulled out a handgun. My blood went cold. "Sit down, Ryan. You're playing." Ryan laughed until Trevor shot our friend Jake in the shoulder. Jake screamed and blood splattered across the wingspan board. I couldn't process what just happened. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. "Every time someone doesn't play their best, someone bleeds," Trevor shouted. Ashley was sobbing and begging him to think about the kids. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold my cards. I kept looking at Jake's blood spreading across the table, thinking I was going to throw up. "The kids need a father who wins," Trevor exclaimed. He forced Jake to keep playing with his good arm, while his girlfriend tried to stop the bleeding with napkins. I wanted to help Jake, but I was frozen in my chair. 20 years of friendship, and I didn't know who this person was anymore. That's when Tom admitted he felt dizzy. Trevor laughed. "Ha ha ha, that's cause I spiked all y'all's drinks. Now we're all equal. Pure strategy." Suddenly, it all made sense. That's why everything felt off. He'd planned this. My best friend had planned all of this. I tried to play badly at the game to end it faster. Trevor noticed immediately and shot my foot. The pain was unlike anything I'd ever felt. 20 years of friendship and you try to let me win. He was crying and screaming at the same time. "Play for real. Show them I can win something." Ryan tried to rush him, but Trevor pistol whipped him so hard he went down cold. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. Ashley was hyperventilating. Sirens wailed in the distance, and Trevor started playing faster. "I finish this game or nobody leaves alive." He kept muttering about showing everyone he wasn't a loser. His hands shook as he rolled dice, and I realized he was completely gone. The championship trophy sat between us, its metal surface reflecting the blood spreading across the table. Trevor's eyes darted between each player, calculating moves while keeping the GN trained on Ashley. My foot throbbed where the bullet had torn through, and I pressed a game piece against the wound to slow the bleeding. Trevor barricaded the door, dragging his gaming table against it while forcing Tom to continue his turn. Tom's hands trembled as he moved his piece, leaving bloody fingerprints on the cards. The sirens grew louder outside, and through the window, I could see red and blue lights painting the apartment walls. I tried reasoning with him, mentioning his daughter Catherine and son Sebastian by name. His hand trembled when I spoke about Catherine, but then he screamed that winners don't negotiate and swung the GN toward Ashley's head. The barrel pressed against her temple as tears streamed down her face. Police cars screeched to a halt outside the building. Trevor noticed Jessica reaching for her phone under the table. In one fluid motion, he fired. The bullet grazed her hand and shattered the phone. Jessica screamed, clutching her bleeding hand to her chest. Trevor revealed he could see all our movements in the mirror mounted on the wall behind him. He'd positioned it perfectly during his preparation. Every subtle gesture, every attempted communication between us was visible to him. We'd been playing into his hands from the start. He forced Jessica to bind everyone's wrists using the scorekeeping ribbons from his gaming supplies. Despite her injured hand, she had to wrap each person's wrists, while Trevor kept the GN aimed at Ashley. The ribbons cut into our skin as she pulled them tight with shaking fingers. My foot continued bleeding through the makeshift pressure. The bullet had gone clean through, leaving a hole that pulsed with each heartbeat. I discreetly grabbed another game piece to apply more pressure, while Trevor fixated on arranging the dice for his next turn. When stressed, his childhood stutter returned, making him repeat certain words. Ashley tried reaching toward the unconscious Ryan, but Trevor grabbed her arm and forced her to sit directly next to him. His cologne filled her nostrils as he made her her continue playing. She gagged at the smell, the same cologne he'd worn during their marriage. A police megaphone crackled to life outside, requesting communication. Trevor's response was to turn up his victory playlist on the speakers. Classic rock blared through the apartment as he dealt new cards to everyone, ignoring the police completely. Jake's girlfriend pleaded to help him staunch the bleeding from his shoulder wound. Trevor made her play Jake's turns instead, her hands leaving bloody prints on each card she touched. In a disturbing display, Trevor kissed each blood-stained card after she handled it, savoring his twisted game. The substances made Tom vomit suddenly across the floor. Trevor interpreted this as weakness and grabbed a handful of game pieces. He forced them into Tom's mouth, making him chew and swallow the plastic tokens as punishment for disrupting the game. I noticed Trevor's laptop still recording everything from its position on the bookshelf. The red light blinked steadily, documenting his crimes along with his planned victory. He wanted evidence of his win, even if it meant recording himself committing violence. Trevor found my wallet on the floor and pulled out the photo of my family. He held it up, studying their faces before pulling out his lighter. The photo curled and blackened as he burned it, saying, "Losers don't deserve families." As he dropped the burning photo, his own wallet fell open, revealing empty spaces where his children's pictures had been removed. A red dot appeared on the wall, moving slowly across the surface. A police sniper had taken position somewhere outside. Trevor noticed immediately and began rearranging everyone around the table, using our bodies as human shields against the windows. He forced Ashley to call the police on speaker, pressing the GN against a photo of their son while she spoke. Her voice shook as she told them everything was fine, just a game night that got too competitive. The officer on the other end didn't believe her, but Trevor ended the call before they could respond. I remembered Trevor mentioning his victory conditions weeks ago during a casual conversation. He didn't just need to win, he needed unanimous acknowledgement from everyone that he deserved to win. An old group text on my phone contained his rambling manifesto about winners and losers, but my phone sat locked away with the others. Trevor made Jake's girlfriend use the first aid kit he'd prepared in advance. He'd stocked it with supplies specifically for gunshot wounds, revealing just how long he'd been planning this. She stitched Jake's shoulder while Trevor continued playing, telling her that real winners play through pain. Ryan began stirring on the floor, consciousness returning slowly. I wonder what Trevor's really thinking as he forces everyone to keep playing through all this blood and chaos. There's something strange about how he prepared everything. The mirror, the first aid kit, even spiking the drinks, like he's been planning this exact scene for weeks. Trevor zip-tied him to a chair before he could fully wake up, then forced Ashley to spoon-feed him game pieces while he was still semi-conscious. Ryan choked and sputtered, but couldn't resist in his dazed state. The lights suddenly cut out as police severed the power. Trevor calmly reached under the table and pulled out battery-powered LED camping lanterns he'd prepared. His recording equipment continued running on backup batteries. He'd thought of everything, planning for weeks to ensure nothing could stop his game. During my turn, I created friction between Trevor and Ashley by asking about specific details of her infidelity with Ryan. The questions made Trevor's face contort with rage, while Ashley sobbed harder. The manipulation felt cruel, but I needed to find any weakness in his control. Trevor's phone lit up with missed calls from his kids. Ashley mentioned they were scared, wondering where their daddy was. This made Trevor spiral further, and he fired through the window toward the police cars outside. Glass shattered as officers dove for cover. Tom's disorientation worsened as the substances took full effect. He started seeing the blood patterns on the table morphing into game boards, pointing at hallucinations only he could see. The sedatives Trevor used apparently had hallucinogenic side effects he hadn't accounted for. Trevor forced everyone to sign a statement declaring he won fair and square. He made us use Jake's blood as ink, dipping our fingers in the pooling crimson to mark the paper. The document would mean nothing legally, but in his twisted mind, it would prove his victory. Jessica's husband arrived outside, having tracked her phone location when she didn't respond to texts. Trevor made her go to the window and tell him she was finally playing with a real winner. Her husband's confused shouts echoed up from the street as she delivered the message through tears. I noticed Trevor sweating profusely, more than the situation warranted. He'd drugged himself too, ensuring what he called fairness in the game. His aim wavered slightly as whatever he'd taken began affecting his system. The playing field was evening in unexpected ways. Ashley tried calming him by admitting she'd lied in court about certain things during their divorce. She hoped the confession would satisfy him, but it only enraged him further. He screamed about manipulation and betrayal, waving the GN wildly as his control frayed. A police negotiator's voice came through the megaphone, mentioning they were contacting his therapist, Dr. Martinez. Trevor exploded at the mention of the name, screaming that his former therapist never understood winners, never grasped what it took to succeed. The negotiator had unknowingly hit a nerve. Trevor made everyone recite why he was better than Ryan, while Ryan slowly regained consciousness in the chair. He demanded creativity in the compliments, rejecting generic praise and forcing us to dig deeper. Each person had to provide specific examples while Ryan's eyes fluttered open, trying to focus through the haze of his concussion. I decided to test Trevor's reaction by intentionally losing my turn. The moment my game piece landed in the wrong spot, he screamed about balanced punishment and shot my other foot. The bullet tore through flesh and bone, sending waves of agony up my leg. Blood pooled beneath my chair as I struggled to stay conscious. Jake's girlfriend had positioned her phone against the game box earlier, secretly recording everything. When Trevor discovered it during a board reset, he grabbed the device and smashed it against the wall. His face went pale when he realized the recording had been live streaming to her social media account. Evidence of his crimes was already spreading across the internet. Tom's hallucinations intensified as the substances peaked in his system. He started talking to his dead mother, reaching toward empty air and crying. Trevor seized on this vulnerability, claiming that winners made their mothers proud, while losers disappointed them even in death. Tom broke down completely, sobbing uncontrollably as reality blurred around him. Trevor forced Ashley and Ryan to play as a team, making them hold hands while moving their shared game piece. Ashley's entire body shook with revulsion as she touched the man who'd destroyed her marriage. Ryan, still groggy from the head injury, kept apologizing apologizing to her in slurred words that Trevor mocked relentlessly. The police attempted to pump tear gas through the broken window. Trevor had anticipated this too, frantically sealing the gaps with wet towels and duct tape from his emergency supplies. His preparation showed its first real limits as wisps of gas seeped through, making everyone's eyes water and throats burn. Jessica and I developed a subtle communication system using eye movements and finger taps while playing. We spoke in code about our children, using game terminology to discuss potential escape routes. Trevor noticed our connection and separated us at the table, but we'd already established our silent language. Trevor revealed he'd been practicing this specific game obsessively for months. He knew every possible card combination, every strategic move, every probability calculation. His notebook showed hundreds of practice games, each one annotated with potential counter-strategies. The depth of his preparation was staggering. Ashley mentioned how Trevor's mother had always called him her little winner before she died. The comment made Trevor freeze mid-turn, his hand trembling as memories flooded back. For a moment, vulnerability cracked through his manic exterior before rage reasserted itself. I played to Trevor's ego by suggesting his victory wouldn't count if Ryan remained too injured to play properly. The manipulation worked. Trevor actually considered letting Jake's girlfriend provide basic first aid to Ryan, wanting all his opponents fully conscious for his triumph. His need for a legitimate win created openings we could exploit. Trevor set a timer on his phone, declaring the game had to finish before his children's bedtime. He wanted them to know their daddy had won something important. The countdown added frantic energy to his movements as minutes ticked away toward his self-imposed deadline. Ryan fully awakened and immediately went into shock, seeing his mangled hand from the pistol whipping. He started hyperventilating and crying out in pain. Trevor interpreted this as weakness and shot Ryan in the shoulder, screaming that real men handled pain without whimpering. Blood soaked through Ryan's shirt as Ashley begged Trevor to stop. The blood loss made Jake delirious. He started laughing at the absurdity of the situation, pointing at the blood-stained game board and making jokes about house rules. His inappropriate laughter unsettled Trevor, who couldn't understand how someone could find humor while losing. The madness was spreading through the room in different forms. Trevor offered to release one person if they would formally denounce all the others as losers. He wanted someone to validate his worldview, to confirm that winning mattered above everything else. The silence that followed his offer spoke volumes. Even facing death, no one would betray the group. I noticed Trevor kept recreating specific game scenarios from past nights when he'd lost. He was systematically proving he could win each situation that had previously defeated him. His behavior followed a pattern, replaying his failures with violent enforcement of his success. A police drone appeared at the window, its camera lens reflecting the room's LED lighting. Trevor made everyone smile and wave while continuing to play, creating a bizarre performance of normalcy. He wanted any footage to show a friendly game night, not a hostage situation. The forced smiles made the scene even more disturbing. I realized Trevor's concept of victory required more than just winning the game. He needed everyone to admit they'd always known he would win, that his superiority was inevitable. This psychological requirement made his goal nearly impossible, feeding his frustration as we refused to provide the validation he craved. Ashley broke under the pressure, promising she'd take him back if he won the game. Her desperation was transparent, but Trevor's face showed a flicker of hope before reality crashed back. He screamed at her for trying to manipulate him, even as tears revealed how much he'd wanted to believe her lie. Tom found unexpected courage in his need to protect Jessica. Despite the substances clouding his mind, he refused to take his turn, folding his arms and shaking his head. Trevor threatened him with the gun, but Tom's protective instinct had awakened something stronger than fear. His defiance inspired others. The group worked together to provide basic first aid using torn clothing and game components. We stemmed bleeding, supported those struggling with substance effects, and kept everyone conscious despite our injuries. Our unity in the face of Trevor's violence frustrated him more than any individual resistance. I maintained our humanity by quietly reciting a prayer my mother had taught me, the words bringing comfort to others. I made sure to speak kindly even to Ryan, despite everything he'd done to Trevor. Showing compassion in the face of cruelty became its own form of resistance. Trevor's speeches grew increasingly manic as the night wore on. He rambled about societal hierarchies, evolutionary psychology, and the fundamental nature of competition. Even he seemed to realize he'd lost control of his narrative, his words becoming repetitive loops that convinced no one. The security footage on Trevor's laptop revealed weeks of solo practice sessions. Between games, the recordings showed him crying, talking to himself, and practicing victory speeches. The depth of his pain was evident in every frame, making his current violence both more understandable and more tragic. His preparation with camping lanterns and backup batteries makes me wonder just how deep this planning really goes. There's something unsettling about someone who thinks through power outages, but doesn't consider how drugging himself might affect his aim with that weapon. Ryan made a shocking admission through his pain and delirium. He confessed he'd never actually loved Ashley, had only wanted what Trevor had. The revelation hit Ashley like a physical blow. Her horror was genuine, as she realized she'd destroyed her family for someone who saw her as a trophy. The group dynamics shifted as the night progressed. Instead of turning on each other as Trevor hoped, we bonded through shared trauma. Each act of violence strengthened our collective resolve. We became unified in our opposition to everything Trevor represented. I marshaled the group's remaining strength through meaningful glances and subtle gestures. Without words, we coordinated our resistance, taking turns absorbing Trevor's rage to protect whoever was weakest at any moment. Our silent communication network expanded beyond Jessica and me to include everyone. Trevor made a chilling confession about his plans after winning. He intended to cull himself at the moment of victory, going out on top as the ultimate winner. The admission revealed the true depths of his despair. This wasn't about winning anymore. It was about ending his pain in what he saw as a blaze of glory. Dr. Martinez's voice came through the police megaphone, attempting generic de-escalation tactics. The therapist's clinical approach and obvious script reading wounded Trevor more than personal attacks could have. He realized even his therapist saw him as just another case number, not a person worth genuine concern. The substances Trevor had taken began affecting him more severely. His carefully planned victory was crumbling into impulsive reactions. His hands shook as he tried to focus on the game, sweat dripping onto the cards. The substances meant to level the playing field were becoming his weakness. Trevor revealed a pattern of violence we'd never suspected. He mentioned his high school girlfriend, who'd refused to date a loser, had died in a suspicious car accident years ago. The casual way he mentioned it, as if it were just another example of life's unfairness, sent chills through everyone. We weren't his first victims. I protected Ashley from Trevor's increasingly personal attacks during the game. When he tried to humiliate her with intimate details of their marriage, I redirected his attention by challenging his game strategy. The unexpected alliance between us confused Trevor, who expected his ex-wife to be universally hated. Jake remained conscious through our collective efforts. Others held pressure on his wound, spoke to keep him alert, and supported his head when he grew faint. His weak smile when we helped him reinforced our bond. Even barely conscious, he was still part of our resistance. Trevor's attempts to divide the group failed repeatedly. We took turns absorbing his rage, spreading the psychological damage across multiple people instead of letting it break any individual. His frustration grew as his tactics proved ineffective against our unity. Tom noticed Trevor checking his GN's chamber repeatedly, a nervous habit that revealed his ammunition anxiety. He was running low on bullets but trying to hide it. This knowledge spread through our silent communication network, offering a glimmer of hope that his threats had limits. The group developed an elaborate system of eye contact and small sounds to plan without movement. Tiny coughs, finger taps, and blinks became a complex language Trevor couldn't decode. We were organizing under his nose, using his own demand for focus on the game against him. Trevor's laptop displayed a drafted sewer slide note blaming everyone but himself for his situation. The document revealed his complete inability to accept responsibility, even in what he planned as his final message. He'd cast himself as the victim in his own violent narrative. The deadline of his children's bedtime came and went. Trevor frantically tried calling them, but Ashley's sister wouldn't put them on the phone. Missing this self-imposed deadline shattered something in him. His movements became more erratic, his focus splitting between the game and his phone. Ryan's delirious mumbling about Ashley triggered Trevor's rage. In his pain and blood loss, Ryan kept apologizing and calling her name. Trevor interpreted every word as mockery, further proof that everyone was laughing at him behind his back. Reality and paranoia blurred in his mind. An opportunity for escape presented itself when Trevor moved to adjust the window barricade. I could have made it to the door while he was distracted. Instead, I chose to stay and help the others. The decision to prioritize group survival over personal escape was noticed by everyone, strengthening our bond. I used my knowledge of the game to subtly prevent Trevor's planned victory. By making specific moves that seemed random but actually blocked his strategy, I frustrated his carefully rehearsed win. He couldn't accuse me of throwing the game because my moves appeared legitimate, just unfortunately timed for him. Even Ryan, despite his injuries and history with Trevor, acknowledged the pain driving his brother's actions. Through tears and blood loss, he expressed understanding of Trevor's hurt while maintaining that his response was insane. The moment of empathy from an unexpected source affected everyone. The truth about Trevor's mother emerged through his rambling. She had driven his father away with similar demands for constant winning and success. Their church counselor had tried to help, but she'd refused to see competition as anything but the highest virtue. Trevor had inherited more than just her eyes. Trevor appeared to achieve victory in the game, his pieces aligned for a technical win, but the group refused to acknowledge it. We sat in silence, denying him the one thing he needed most, recognition. His triumph felt hollow without our admission of his superiority. He threatened to cull Ashley first if we didn't admit he'd won fairly. The GN pressed against her temple as he demanded each person state that he was the better player. His voice cracked with desperation. Even with violence, he couldn't force the validation he craved. I challenged Trevor to a different game, one he hadn't practiced obsessively. The suggestion that his victory was meaningless because he'd only won through preparation rather than natural talent struck at his deepest insecurities. He actually considered it, his need to prove himself warring with his scripted plan. Trevor revealed he'd saved 3 bullets specifically for Russian roulette, one for Ashley who'd betrayed him, one for Ryan who'd stolen his life, and one for me who'd failed him as a friend. He wanted to make us play his final game, turning our lives into one last competition. The group faced an impossible choice when Trevor demanded we select who would play his deadly game. Our unity held firm as we refused to choose. No one would condemn another to face those odds. Our collective refusal enraged him further. Jake's girlfriend volunteered to play, saying she had the least to lose since she wasn't part of the original conflict. Others physically blocked her from moving forward, refusing to let her sacrifice herself. The protective gesture showed how deeply we'd bonded through the night's trauma. I proposed that Trevor play Russian roulette against himself, suggesting the ultimate winner needed no opponent. The psychological manipulation worked. Trevor actually considered it, seeing a twisted logic in competing against the only person he considered worthy, himself. Ashley admitted she'd found one recording device last week, but was too scared to confront him. Her confession made others realize they'd noticed odd behaviors too, but dismissed them. We'd all seen warning signs and chosen to ignore them, our collective denial enabling this moment. The weight of our complicity hung heavy in the air. Trevor's laptop showed he'd been streaming everything to a private server, preserving his victory for posterity. The realization that our ordeal was being documented somewhere else made the situation feel even more surreal. He'd created multiple backups of his triumph. The group judged him together, not as losers, but as humans pitying his emptiness. Our collective gaze held no hatred, only profound sadness for what he'd become. The absence of anger in our eyes seemed to wound him more than any insult could have. Trevor snapped completely at our silent judgment. He waved the GN wildly, stumbling over game pieces scattered on the floor. His foot caught on a dice, and he accidentally fired into the floor near his own foot. The near miss made him even more unstable, his movements becoming dangerously unpredictable. Wounded by his own clumsiness, Trevor became more dangerous. He sprayed his remaining bullets randomly around the room, no longer aiming at specific targets. Glass shattered, wood splintered, and we all dove for whatever cover we could find. Jessica took a bullet in the stomach during the chaotic firing. She gasped and doubled over, blood seeping through her fingers as she pressed against the wound. The group faced an impossible choice between rushing Trevor while he was distracted or helping Jessica before she bled out. I made my decision instantly. Using only my arms, I dragged myself across the floor toward Trevor. My useless feet left twin trails of blood as I pulled my body forward. Others rushed to Jessica's aid while I focused on reaching the man who'd been my best friend. The key to stopping Trevor lay in his desperate need for acknowledgement. I started clapping slowly, the sound echoing in the sudden silence after the gunfire. The unexpected applause confused him, making him pause mid-reload. Others joined the applause, creating a surreal moment of forced celebration. Trevor's eyes darted between us, unable to process why we were clapping. His confusion bought precious seconds as I continued dragging myself closer. I reached Trevor just as he slumped against the wall, exhausted from his manic episode. Ryan saying he never loved Ashley and just wanted what Trevor had makes me curious about whether that's really true or if he's just saying it because of the pain. People say strange things when they're hurt badly. We struggled for the gun, both of us barely able to stand. My legs were useless, his strength depleted by substances and adrenaline crash. We grappled like broken dolls, neither having any real power left. Trevor ranted about winners and losers while we fought, his entire philosophy distilled to this moment of violence. His words came out slurred and desperate, the substances making his speech increasingly incoherent. 20 years of friendship reduced to this pathetic struggle. Through his rambling, Trevor admitted his mother had died, calling him a disappointment. Her final words had been about his failures, not her love for him. His entire worldview, his obsession with winning, stemmed from that crushing moment. The revelation explained everything and nothing. Tom, despite the substances wearing off badly, managed to help restrain Trevor. The sedatives had left him shaky but functional, and he used his remaining strength to pin Trevor's arms. The least injured among us had become our unexpected hero in the final moments. I held Trevor's own GN, having wrestled it away during our struggle. The weight of the decision pressed down on me. I could end this permanently, ensure he never hurt anyone again. My finger found the trigger as I looked into the eyes of my former best friend. Instead of culling him, I shot Trevor in the shoulder, mirroring Jake's wound. The bullet tore through muscle and flesh, dropping him to his knees. Pain, but not death. Punishment, but not execution. Even after everything, I couldn't cross that final line. Trevor begged us to cull him through his tears and pain. He believed losers didn't deserve to live, and in his mind, he'd lost everything that mattered. His pleas for death were desperate, seeking escape through our hands since he lacked the courage to do it himself. Police breached the door just as Trevor reached for a hidden knife in his boot. The group shouted warnings, and officers restrained him before he could grab it. His final attempt at violence failed like everything else that night. Trevor tried one last manipulation, claiming we'd all attacked him, that he was the victim. The accusation fell flat as officers noted the recording equipment, the live stream evidence, and our injuries clearly showing who'd been the aggressor. His lies crumbled against overwhelming proof. As police restrained him, Trevor looked directly at me with hollow eyes. His voice came out small and broken as he asked the question that revealed how completely he'd lost touch with reality. He wanted to know if he'd won. My response came without thinking, words that summarized everything wrong with his worldview. I told him he'd never understood the game, that winning meant nothing if you destroyed everything to achieve it. The confusion in his eyes showed he genuinely didn't comprehend. Paramedics flooded the apartment, immediately attending to Jessica's stomach wound. They worked with practiced efficiency, stemming the bleeding and preparing her for transport. One paramedic wearing a small crosspin offered quiet reassurance as they stabilized her. Jake's shoulder wound, though serious, hadn't hit anything vital. The medical team cleaned and dressed it properly, replacing Jake's girlfriend's improvised stitches with professional care. He'd need surgery, but would recover full use of his arm. My feet required immediate attention, both bullets having caused significant damage. Medics immobilized them and started IV antibiotics to prevent infection. The pain medication they administered finally dulled the throbbing agony I'd endured all night. Ryan's injuries were extensive, but treatable. Between the pistol whipping and shoulder wound, he'd need extended hospitalization. The irony of him suffering alongside Trevor's other victims wasn't lost on anyone, though we were too exhausted to comment. Tom's system slowly cleared the substances, though he'd need monitoring for potential complications. The combination Trevor had used could have been lethal in higher doses. We'd been lucky his desire for fairness had kept him from using fatal amounts. Crime scene technicians began processing the apartment, photographing blood patterns and collecting evidence. Yellow tape sectioned off areas while officers took preliminary statements from those of us still coherent enough to speak. The championship trophy sat among the evidence, its weight unusual for such a cheap prize. An officer noticed and opened its base, revealing photographs Trevor had hidden inside. Pictures of Catherine and Sebastian, removed from his wallet but preserved in the only thing he thought he'd keep. Ashley broke down seeing the hidden photos, realizing Trevor had been carrying his children with him even in his madness. The images were worn from handling, suggesting he'd looked at them often during his solitary practice sessions. We gave our statements separately, each recounting the night's events from our perspective. The consistency of our accounts, combined with video evidence, made the investigation straightforward. Trevor's premeditation was undeniable. Hospital rooms became our temporary gathering places over the following days. We visited each other, bonding through recovery rather than games. Conversations were quiet, focused on healing and understanding rather than blame or anger. Jessica's surgery went well, the bullet missing vital organs by millimeters. She'd have a permanent scar, but no lasting internal damage. Her husband stayed by her side, grateful she'd survived and understanding about the trauma she'd endured. My feet required multiple surgeries to repair bone and tissue damage. Doctors said I'd walk again, but with a permanent limp. Physical therapy would take months, but full mobility wasn't guaranteed, a small price for survival. Trevor's psychiatric evaluation revealed severe depression and delusional thinking. His competency to stand trial became a central question. The recordings, however, showed clear premeditation that undermined any insanity defense. Ashley filed for a restraining order and relocated with the children. She found a small apartment 2 towns over, far from Ryan and the memories Catherine Catherine and Sebastian started therapy to process their father's actions and their own trauma. Ryan faced his own reckoning during recovery. His role in destroying his brother's marriage had contributed to the tragedy. He cut contact with Ashley completely, recognizing the damage he'd caused. Some wounds couldn't be healed with apologies. The board game cafe where Trevor worked closed temporarily after news spread. Regular customers couldn't reconcile the helpful employee they'd known with the man who'd held people hostage. The owner eventually reopened, but removed Trevor's recommended games from the shelves. Our game night group dissolved without formal discussion. The thought of sitting around a table rolling dice felt impossible after what we'd experienced. We stayed in touch, but found other ways to maintain our friendships. Jake returned to work after 6 weeks, his arm in a sling but functional. His girlfriend stayed with him throughout recovery, their relationship strengthened by surviving trauma together. They got engaged 3 months later, finding joy despite the darkness. Tom and Jessica grew closer through their shared experience. Their bond, forged in crisis, developed into something deeper during recovery. They started dating quietly, finding comfort in someone who understood without explanation. I returned to work on modified duty, unable to stand for long periods. Colleagues treated me differently, unsure how to act around someone who'd survived something so extreme. The normalcy I craved remained elusive. Trevor pleaded guilty to avoid trial, accepting a 15-year sentence. His lawyer argued for leniency based on mental health issues, but the judge considered the premeditation and violence. The recordings Trevor made to document his victory became the key evidence against him. During sentencing, Trevor showed no emotion as victims gave impact statements. He stared at the table, occasionally glancing at where his family would have sat. The courtroom was notably empty on his side. Ashley didn't attend the sentencing, choosing to focus on her children's healing instead. She sent a written statement about the impact on Catherine and Sebastian, who still had nightmares about their father. The judge read it aloud, while Trevor finally showed a crack in his composure. 6 months after that night, the survivors met for coffee. Jake walked with a cane but moved confidently. Jessica's scar was hidden beneath her shirt, though she unconsciously touched the spot when nervous. I still limped, probably always would. We didn't talk about games or winning or losing. Instead, we discussed work, relationships, and daily life. Normal topics that felt precious after surviving something so abnormal. We'd learned what actually mattered. The coffee shop where we met had board games available for customers. We noticed but didn't comment, each understanding why none of us reached for them. Some activities were forever tainted by association. Our monthly meetings became a quiet ritual, not support groups or therapy sessions, just friends checking in. We'd been bonded by trauma, but maintained connections through choice. The shared experience created an understanding that didn't require words. Ashley sent occasional updates about the kids through Jake's girlfriend. Catherine had started playing soccer, channeling energy into physical activity. Sebastian joined the school choir, finding his voice in music. They were healing in their own ways. I thought about Trevor sometimes, wondering if prison gave him the structure he'd craved. His obsession with rules and winning might find outlet in that regulated environment. Or maybe confinement had broken his competitive spirit entirely. The apartment where it happened was eventually cleaned and re-rented. New tenants had no idea about the blood that had soaked into floorboards or the terror that had filled those rooms. Places moved on even when people couldn't. Our scars served as permanent reminders of how quickly friendship could twist into something monstrous. Trevor had been desperate to prove he wasn't a loser, but in trying to force victory, he'd lost more than any game could measure. His children, his freedom, his friends, his humanity. We'd survived Trevor's game, but victory felt hollow. There were no winners that night, only survivors trying to rebuild normal lives. We'd learned that some competitions weren't worth entering, some prizes not worth claiming. The trophy was returned to Ashley after the trial. She threw it away immediately, wanting no reminders of that night. Later, she regretted not keeping the hidden photos of the children, one of the few signs Trevor had still loved them despite his madness. Life continued in ordinary ways. Work, bills, relationships, daily routines that felt both mundane and precious. We'd learned to appreciate boring stability after experiencing violent chaos. Peace had become our only goal. In the end, Trevor's desperate need to win had cost him everything he'd claimed to be fighting for. He'd wanted to show his children he was a winner, but instead showed them violence and fear. His twisted game had no real victors, only casualties trying to heal. We were free from Trevor's game, but forever changed by it. Some victories weren't worth achieving, and we'd learned that lesson in the hardest way possible. The real winning move would have been never playing at all. Thanks for reading this story with me. It really made me think about how people can change so much.